Unveiling Esther Carter's Dark Feast. The shocking Thanksgiving horror we never knew about. Every Thanksgiving, people gather around tables, turkey sizzling, families laughing. But one fateful day, the name Esther Carter sparked fear instead of gratitude. Rumors whispered of a feast that went beyond tradition, a celebration laced with dark secrets. What could drive a woman to culinary madness? Just ask the terrified townsfolk who claimed to have witnessed the bizarre. You see, on that infamous day, Esther didn't just serve food. She conjured unearthly dishes, apparently using ingredients no one could explain. At the heart of town lay her weathered cottage, its windows always shrouded in mystery. Folks claimed they could hear eerie music wafting through the cold air, an enchanting melody that seemed to call. "You can't go there," the older citizens would say, their voices quaking with fear. Some swore they saw shadows dancing across her front porch, shadows that never belonged to a human. Children dared each other to approach, only to run back shrieking, clutching their little hearts. Slowly, the rumors escalated. They began to say she'd been seen at the odd hours midnight gathering strange herbs in the moonlight, her movements as fluid and wild as the wind. And then came the worst of it, the disappearance of pets. Cats and dogs vanished without a trace, leaving no paw prints, no clues, just the haunting cries of those who lost them. As Thanksgiving approached that year, children huddled together, swapping stories in hushed tones, their eyes wide as saucers. What if she used them for her feast? One whispered, trembling hands covering her mouth. Speculation ignited a growing dread that hung over the town like an approaching storm. How could one woman evoke such terror? But the last straw was when the townspeople discovered the platter she had offered at last year's banquet, an unsettling arrangement of exquisitely cooked meats, the likes of which they struggled to identify, ink black on the outside but glistening red like fresh blood on the inside. Eyewitnesses trembled as they recounted Esther's smile, wide as the crescent moon, gleaming with something dark and twisted as she served her mysterious dishes to unsuspecting guests. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. With a week to go before Thanksgiving, whispers fluttered through the streets like frantic butterflies. People felt the icy grip of desperation as they decided this year they would confront Esther. The plan was wild, almost insane. Gather a group, storm the cottage, demand answers. But what if they didn't just uncover a hidden truth? What if they laid bare something far more sinister? The stakes were high, the mystery deeper than anyone could fathom. Little did they know, a dark shadow lingered just beyond the treeline, watching their every move. What lay ahead on that alternative Thanksgiving? What horror awaited them in the depths of Esther Carter's secret kitchen? The sun waned, illuminating the forest with a blood-orange hue as the time drew near. The townspeople had gathered outside Esther's cottage, a knot of anxious souls, fidgeting and whispering nervously. They watched as the deepening shadows coiled around their feet, stretching like fingers grasping for warmth. The air crackled with tension, each breath laden with dread. "Are we really going through with this?" murmured Jen, her voice barely above a whisper as she clutched her friend's arm. Eyes wide with fright, she shifted uncomfortably. What if she isn't just a crazy old lady? What if she's something worse? "That's exactly why we're here," Marcy said, her voice steadier than she felt. "They had lost too many pets, too many moments to fear. We can't let her keep scaring people. We need to know the truth." But what truth awaited them? The old legends filled with dark undertones twisted like the branches of the gnarled trees around them swirled in her mind. What if her dark magic was real? As they approached the derelict door, a chill swept through the group, and their hearts thudded in unison like a war drum echoing in the stillness. With a swift push, the door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room, the air thick and heavy with an aroma that was part sweet, part sinister. Tall shelves lined the walls, filled with jars of peculiar items. Herbs, dried roots, and what looked like tiny, blackened skulls. The flickering flame of a single candle cast eerie shadows, dancing wildly upon the walls, creating shapes that seemed to morph into figures. "Do you smell that?" James said, his stomach lurching. "It's disgusting." "Shoo!" Marcy hissed, her eyes darting around. They had come this far. They couldn't afford to lose their nerve now. As they ventured further, they caught sight of a large table at the center of the room, decorated in a grotesque manner, laden with an array of dishes that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. "Is that?" Jen stammered, her breath hitching at the sight. "Is that a leg? A human leg?" A collective gasp escaped the group, and panic threatened to seize them. Just then, they heard a door swing open at the back of the cottage. A figure stepped out, cloaked in shadow, a silhouette as twisted as the tales that followed her name. It was Esther, her wild hair catching the light in a way that made her look almost ethereal. "Welcome, my guests," she said, her smile unsettling. A grin that felt as though it could tear at the very fabric of sanity. "You've come just in time for the feast, and I believe you'll find it most satisfying." The townsfolk stood frozen, paralyzed between their hope for answers and the immediate terror of being discovered. Could they back away without her noticing? Or would this be the moment they would finally uncover what lay behind her sinister facade? "Join me, won't you?" Esther beckoned with a crooked finger, her voice rolling over them like the tide. "The soup is bubbling with secrets, and the main course is to die for, with hearts pounding and their minds racing." They were thrust into a decision: to confront the nightmare head-on or flee into the safety of the unknown. Would they discover the truth of Esther's dark feast before it was too late? Or were they about to become a new ingredient in her macabre culinary experimentation? As they hesitated, the room filled with the unmistakable clanking of utensils stirring, and the haunting melody they heard only in echoes before blossomed into a chorus that sent chills down their spines. What ingredients lay hidden in the shadows of that malevolent kitchen? Were they prepared to face the true horror of the feast? The air felt charged as the figure of Esther loomed, her smile creeping wider, revealing teeth that glinted unnaturally in the flickering candlelight. Marcy clenched Jenna's arm tighter, her heart racing, drowning out the ominous thrum of the haunting melody that seemed to radiate from the very walls. "We don't have to do this," Jen whispered, her voice trembling now. But Marcy shook her head, catching the resolute look in her friend's eye. "Esther," Marcy called, her voice steady despite the quake of fear in her stomach. "We want to know the truth about you. Why do you keep claiming our pets? Why do you keep the townspeople in fear?" Esther's expression shifted, a flash of surprise darting across her face, quickly replaced by a cold, calculating grin. "Ah!" The brave little ones, her eyes sparkled in a way that sent a chill down everyone's spine. "You want the truth?" She took a menacing step forward, causing the group to instinctively take a step back. The shadows danced around her, twisting and flickering as if born from her presence. "Very well, but truth often comes with a price." James, driven by emotion, stammered, "What do you mean, a price?" "We just want to understand." "Understanding can be such a grotesque gift," she replied, her voice silky smooth yet dripping with malice. "But perhaps you are ready for the soup." With that, she turned and glided toward the table, her movements fluid and hypnotic. The rest of the group exchanged horrified glances, each one silently asking if they were truly prepared to take this path. Esther lifted the lid from a large pot that sat steaming away. A thick, dark liquid rolled within, bubbling away as if it held some ancient secret. "Care for a taste?" she asked, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. Jen closed her eyes, the stench wafting through the air even more pungent now. "I can't," she moaned, bile rising in her throat. "Look, we need to leave now," James shouted, stepping backwards toward the door, while the others formed a protective circle around Jen. Panic rose. They were unprepared for this confrontation. Esther chuckled, a sound that clawed at their nerves. "Oh, but you're not leaving just yet," she taunted. "You see, that feast you were so curious about? It's already begun. Your precious town holds so many delectable ingredients. Marcy snapped, what do you mean? You can't just, but her words were cut off by the rasping sound of a door slamming, locking them in place. Ah, my darlings, Esther purred with a glint in her eye, you will see. The feast is not just for the body, but for the soul as well. In a moment, the town will gather, believing they are here for a celebration when it will be a reckoning. Frozen in terror, the townspeople watched as shadows surged around them, taking shapes of twisted creatures that seemed to whisper their darkest fears. The walls echoed with laughter that echoed poorly past the realms of reality. Isn't it delightful? Esther's voice was honeyed yet sharp. You've chosen knowledge over ignorance. How brave! Suddenly, the sound of a distant, joyful chorus rippled through the air, almost mocking in its happiness. The townspeople outside, unaware of the nightmare within, continued to celebrate, oblivious to the horror that lurked just beyond the threshold. Marcy gripped Jenna's hand tight, fear surging through them. We can't let this happen, she said, her voice fierce. We can't just stand by. Then make a choice, Esther said, her eyes glimmering with malice and delight. Join me in the feast or become the feast. Either way, by night's end, you will know the truth. With every breath, the group's uncertainty mounted. What dark twist awaited them in the depths of this house of horrors? Would they break free, or were they about to become a part of Esther's unimaginable legacy? As ominous shadows encroached, the chorus of cheer outside grew louder. But could they withstand what lurked just behind the veil? The line between horror and humanity blurred, and one question loomed above all. What did the feast truly intend to serve? The shadows thickened around them, swallowing every flicker of light. It felt as if the very walls were contracting, breathing in their fear. Marcy turned to the rest of the group, searching their eyes for a sign that someone had a plan. But they were all just as lost, staring into the abyss that was Esther. Listen, Marcy breathed, squeezing Jenna's hand tighter, we need to stay focused. We can't let her manipulate us. There has to be a way out. What if we fight? James suggested, his voice wavering, but a hint of defiance flickered in his gaze. What if we burn the soup? Burn this whole place down? Esther couldn't control the flames. Esther twisted her head, an unsettling smile on her lips, as if enjoying their despair. Ah, my dear boy, but that one change what's already been set in motion. You are bound here now until the feast is done. Her eyes gleamed, and Marcy felt something shift in the air. It was as if she could feel the pulse of the town outside, the laughter growing louder, cheerful music drifting in, mocking all that was happening within the locked walls. How could they remain so blissfully unaware? Enough of this, Marcy shouted, her voice sharper now, echoing against the shadows. You're not going to trap us like rats. We'll find a way. Esther stepped closer, and a chill ran down Marcy's spine. Dear girl, do you think you have the power to resist? I hold your fears, your dark thoughts, and they feed me. The shadows around her seemed to throb, pulsing like a living thing, as the laughter outside crescendoed. It drowned out everything else, a clanging reminder of innocence locked outside while horror brewed within. I want to be part of this, Jen gasped, her face pale, but strength surged in her voice. We want to be your ingredients, Esther. For a heartbeat, silence fell over the group, doused in raw uncertainty. Jen's defiance sparked something within Marcy. Together, she shouted, her voice ringing with determination. What do you suggest? James asked, eyes wide with renewed hope. If she holds our fears, what do? We face her. We tell her the truth about us, our fears. Maybe that will loosen her grip, Marcy urged, her heart pounding, but a tiny flame of courage igniting in her soul. Esther cackled, sending tendrils of dread slithering through the air. Oh, how quaint! You think sharing your weaknesses can save you? The truth, dear ones, only complicates the feast. The table groaned along with their doubts, filled with grotesque dishes under lids that could barely contain what lay within. It was as if the pot bubbled in agreement, hungry to spill its secrets and horrors. Do you see? Esther pressed on, her eyes flickering unnaturally. This is the truth of who you truly are. And here's the fascinating part. When the townspeople arrive, you will either become part of my feast or, in your desperation, you'll sacrifice one of your own to save yourselves. Marcy's breath caught. Never, she whispered, a whirlwind of emotions crashing inside her. Did Esther truly expect them to turn on one another? The very thought made her stomach churn. The villagers outside continued to cheer, the drums and jubilant cries spiraling higher, blissfully ignorant of the terror creeping closer. Esther's guests would soon arrive at the door, hungry for joy, but it was darkness that awaited them. We need a plan now, Marcy urged, panic pulsing through her veins. They couldn't be trapped here, not with that feasting call in the air. But even as they spoke, the locks on the door rattled, a reminder that time was running short. What were they willing to do to escape? From behind the door, laughter echoed again, brighter, more insistent, as if the very essence of the townsfolk was lured closer to the threshold. They could feel it growing, an almost tangible energy wrapping around them. Choose wisely, Esther whispered, her hand poised above the bubbling pot. Their eyes locked, the enormity of the choices ahead weighing heavily. Would they betray their bonds of friendship for survival? Would they stand together in defiance of the wickedness around them? Or would they fall prey to Esther's warped games? The door rattled once more, bringing the festivity closer. Would they crumble under the pressure, or could they unite, embracing the truth as their only weapon against the feast? As they braced for the worst, the door began to creak open, the warmth of the outside world beckoning with an unwitting promise. What awaited them on the other side could change everything, or seal their fates forever. Would they rise against Esther, or become part of her twisted legacy? As the door swung open, the juxtaposition of the darkened room and the vibrant world outside left Marcy momentarily breathless. Sunlight spilled into the dim space, illuminating dust particles that danced in the air. The euphoric sounds of laughter, merriment, and sizzling festivities beckoned from beyond, almost daring them to take that step into the revelry. But looming in front of them, Esther's figure cast a long shadow, distorting any warmth that daylight brought. "Ah, my dear children," she said, a smirk stretching across her face. "What's on the other side may seem bright, but remember, appearances deceive." Her voice dripped with sweet mockery as the warmth from the outside faded, leaving only an icy chill in its wake. Marcy glanced at Jen, whose face now reflected both spinning hope and seeping dread. "We need to move together," she yelled, taking a step forward. It felt almost instinctual to break away from the nightmare that had engulfed them for too long. But even before putting one foot through the threshold, Marcy's heart raced with what lay ahead. Would they truly be free, or merely exchanging one trap for another? A wave of trepidation swept over them as they realized the sounds of celebration morphed into a sinister choir, chanting their names. Marcy, Jen, James. The calls echoed around, tauntingly weaving in and out of their consciousness like ghosts of hearts once solidly linked. The air thickened, tinged with an unnatural sweetness mixed with the stench of burnt offerings. Marcy trembled. "We can't let her win." The fire in her voice barely masked her fear. "We need to confront the truth, our own truths." She inhaled sharply, feeling the weight of revelations that pressed against her throat like a noose. But what if the truths she revealed only served to deepen Esther's darkness? With a newfound urgency, she turned to the group. "Esther thrives on conflict. We mustn't let our fears overshadow our resolve. Let us share our truths and strip her of her power. Together we can turn the tide." "Are you out of your mind?" James replied, his voice wavering. "You really think that'll work? What if she uses it against us? Then we'll make it a weapon, a way to expose her." Jen chimed in, defiance sparking in her eyes. Esther's laughter rang out, a symphony of malice and triumph, reverberating against the walls like the tolling of a treacherous bell. "Oh, how delightful! What a beautiful sight it would be, watching you unravel before the townsfolk. They would love to see your dirty laundry flapping in the wind." Suddenly, the door behind them slammed shut, throwing them into a panic. The sound echoed through the hall like thunder. Now what? James gasped, wrestling against the growing dread that filled the room. Marcy's resolve hardened. We make the first confession. She squared her shoulders, taking a step forward into the captivating shadows. I'll go first. With shuddering breaths, she began to release the fears she had held close, each one spilling from her lips like poison. I'm terrified of never being enough, of disappointing everyone I love. With each confession of honesty, shadows shrank, losing their strength with every word that rolled off her tongue. I fear being alone, Jen admitted, her eyes tearing up. That I'm a burden. James hesitated but finally added, I can't face the truth of my worthlessness. Esther writhed, her face contorting as if stricken by an unseen force, her smile faltering. Every new message of vulnerability took a petty piece of her power away. They were breaking her hold. Keep going, Marcy shouted, feeling a rush of strength blossom within her. We're not afraid of you, Esther. But just as confidence surged, there came a series of loud knocks on the door. The cheerful voices grew louder. The blissful oblivion of the townsfolk crept back. Esther's expression transformed into something darker, more menacing. It's time for the feast to begin. As the laughter escalated, rising to a fever pitch, the group felt the pull of the outside world calling. Would the doors yield to them? Would they stand united, or would despair sweep them into the feast that awaited? With eyes locked on Esther, whispered promises of solidarity entwined their souls as heavy breaths filled the charged atmosphere. The truth of the feast hung palpably in the air. But as they stood at the precipice of revelation, the loudest knock echoed through their bones. What horrors awaited them beyond? Would they find freedom or become unwilling participants in Esther's grotesque banquet? The air thickened, and tension twisted their insides tighter as another knock carved through the silence, demanding to be answered. Just as Marcia's heart threatened to burst from her chest, the door rattled violently against its frame, and the laughter outside swelled into a chaotic crescendo. It sounded like the world outside had become a swirling entity eager to pull them in. Stay close, she urged, grabbing Jenna's hand tightly. James, trembling, positioned himself near the wall, staring at Esther as if she held all the answers. The malevolence in her eyes flickered, revealing cracks in her facade. She was losing control, and the energy in the room shifted like a storm brewing on the horizon. Do you really think your little confessions will save you? Esther taunted, her voice laced with venom. You're just feeding me. Every word is another ingredient for a grander feast, one that demands greater sacrifice. What sacrifice? Jen shouted, her voice wavering between fear and anger. What more do you want from us? The truth can be a bitter dish, Esther crooned, stepping closer, her presence a suffocating fog. And tonight, my dears, it must be seasoned with your deepest secrets. The air pulsed with dread as they exchanged frantic glances, each of them harboring hidden fears that intermingled with shame. A flicker of a candle from a nearby window caught Marcia's eye, illuminating the edges of her friends' faces, revealing the intricate battle of uncertainty playing out among them. Jen began, but her voice faltered. Their fears were like chains, binding them to the ground, and Esther knew it. Go on, Esther prodded, tilting her head as though savoring the tension. Share your darkest truths. Let them comfort me as I prepare for my feast. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the door, causing them all to jump. What is happening out there? James mouthed, his breath quickening. Perhaps they already know how you're going to suffer. Esther grinned, her satisfaction ringing mockingly. Maybe they do, Marcy said, taking a tentative step forward. Her heart raced with a fervent hope that they could turn the tide. But we won't let you manipulate us anymore. Tonight, we own our stories. Maybe it's time for the truth to be laid bare, James whispered, suddenly emboldened. I have a secret that haunts me. Marcy turned to him sharply, panic flaring. Could now really be the moment? What if Esther twisted his words into something dangerous? Here it goes, he continued, gathering what little courage he could muster. When my father died, I felt relief because I was finally free from the chains of his expectations. Gasps echoed in the room. Marcy's heart sank. A confession so raw. She couldn't hide the betrayal that swept over her. Esther's grin widened. Ah, a lovely morsel. Such guilt, such shame. The shadows crackled around her. Keep feeding me your secrets. Children, you'll never be free until you're purged of every dark thought. No, Jen shouted, her voice cutting through the oppressive weight of Esther's manipulations. It's not about her. We will stand united. You can't break what you didn't build. Marcy took a deep breath and felt warmth coursing through her. Enough. It's time for me to share my truth. A tremor coursed through her as she stepped into the vulnerable light. I once believed happiness meant serving others, even when it cost me my own soul. I feared if I didn't conform, I wouldn't be worthy of love. With that, the ground beneath them began to shake, an ominous sign that Esther's world was shattering. Stop! Esther screamed, her fingers curling in rage as the walls shuddered. You're only making it worse. But the weight of their honesty surged like a wave, ready to drown the darkness. Then, silence. A suddenness that held them captive, anchored in a moment where breath felt like a blade. Would they hold onto their truths, or would Esther's haunting laughter devour them whole? The pounding at the door intensified, an urgent demand to be let in, or was it a warning of fate that awaited them inside? Marcy's heart thundered as she glanced between her friends and the door. What lay beyond that threshold? Would anyone dare to cross such a line again? With bated breath, they stood on the edge of revelation, waiting for the inevitable. Desperation clawed at them, questioning if courage could save them from Esther, or if they could truly walk free before the hunger grew insatiable. In that stillness, a chilling whisper echoed just beyond the door, and with it, the final question hung pregnant in the air. What would the feast demand from them, and were they truly ready to pay the price? The silence fractured abruptly as another bludgeoning pound resonated from the door, shaking Marcy to her core. It felt as if an unseen force was trying to break through to their fragile circle, desperate to end this standoff. Shadows danced wildly as the candle flickered precariously, and for an instant, all they could hear was the war drum of Marcy's heart echoing in the oppressive quiet. Are you all going to just stand there? Or are you ready to face the truth? Esther sneered, her eyes glinting as she leaned closer. The words dripped from her lips like poison, sparking a surge of fury in Marcy. We're not scared of you, Jen blurted, though uncertainty crept into her voice, threading its way through her bravado. You think you can feed off us? We won't let you. Marcy could see the others faltering, doubt gripping the edges of their resolve. She felt it too, an urge to shrink back into the darkness they had all been trying to escape. But interconnectedness now burned brighter than fear. They had opened that door, each confession cracking the foundation of Esther's control. I'm going to finish what I started, James said suddenly, his words booming with newfound resolve. When I was 12, my mother told me I was never enough. I tried so hard to please her, but the more I tried, the more she withdrew. In her absence, pain turned into darkness, and I thought maybe if I could be perfect, one day she'd love me. Each word bore the weight of his truth, carrying the air of a long-held grievance. Marcy felt the heat radiate from his confession, a blast of clarity that swept through the room. The shaking grew tender, like a gentle rumble preparing for a revolution. Esther's eyes widened. Not in triumph but in panic, a glimmer of vulnerability flashed before her mask of malice slipped back into place. You think your stories matter? She hissed, her tone rising sharply with venom. All of it is just fuel. It will only make me hungrier. Not if we turn it against you. Jen spat defiantly, her fear transforming into fierce determination. A heady rush of adrenaline coursed through Marcy as she stepped forward again, feeling the ground beneath her surge, as if it were sinking with her heartbeat. I remember the night my father told me he never wanted to see me again, she said, voice steady. I was crushed. I thought losing his love was the end. But now I see it was the beginning. I can't be held captive by his fears anymore. Esther recoiled slightly, as if struck by lightning. The atmosphere shifted tangibly. It felt as though the room were simultaneously collapsing and expanding, hovering on a tightrope of truth and deception. "Enough!" Esther bellowed, her sharply contorted features tightening in rage. "You'll regret this." In that moment, the door rattled violently again, louder and more frantic than before. Marcy turned to face it, uncertainty clawing at her. "Who's out there? Let us in," a muffled voice cried, merging with a cacophony of murmurs and cries. "We know what she is. We know what she does." "Who are they?" James gasped, eyes darting between the door and the now trembling figure of Esther. "Others who share your fate." Esther's expression twisted into a wicked grin, knowing how tightly they were woven into her dark tapestry. "They are drawn to the truth just as you are. But even now they can't save you." The pounding intensified, shadows of desperation racing into their midst. If they accepted help, could they break free from Esther's grip? Or would inviting in the outside force plunge them deeper into her darkness? Marcy felt the rush of urgency too strong to ignore. "We have to decide now." As the door splintered from relentless attempts to break through, a chilling thought encircled her mind. What if the truth outside was far worse than the one they had been unearthing? What if they had awakened something far more monstrous than Esther? Would they choose to risk it all to escape together? Or would fear keep them shackled to the darkness they fought so hard to escape? The answer hung in the air, electrifying and terrifying, unfolding like a terrifying game of chance. And then, just as they braced for the coming chaos, the door burst wide open, unveiling the ultimate threat, revealing shadows that looked like them, echoed their fears, but were twisted into something unrecognizable. What had they really unleashed? The chaos uncoiled the moment the door flew open. A collective gasp filled the room, a raw, vocal expression of disbelief and terror that mingled in the air like a storm. Shadows poured in, morphing from indistinct outlines to deformed shapes, each bearing features that kept a grotesque resemblance to Marcy and her friends. What are they?" Jen stammered, eyes widening as if her sight alone could shield her from the horror radiating before them. "They are us," Marcy whispered, her breath hitching as the chilling truth settled in. Each shadow bore the echoes of their deepest fears, twisting their faces into ghoulish caricatures of despair and regret. She could see remnants of her own self-doubt in the reflection of their eyes, a haunting mockery of her pain. One figure, with hollow cheeks and mirthless eyes, stepped closer, its voice a haunting echo. "You thought you could escape? You'll always be tethered to your past. We're more real than you think." Marcy's heart raced. This wasn't just fear manifesting. This was a living nightmare, the embodiment of everything they had tried to bury deep within. The truth they had so bravely begun to unveil no longer felt like a weapon against Esther. It had become their chains. Esther's smile turned sinister, her expression twisted with delight. "Welcome to your reckoning. You've opened the door to your souls, and now they feast." She cackled, the sound reverberating through the walls, setting off a cacophony of unnatural laughter from the shadows. James stepped back, fear etched across his face. "No, we can't give in to this." He lunged forward, attempting to shove the shadows back, but they flowed past him like liquid smoke, undeterred. "You can't fight us," echoed the figures as they encroached, their fingers stretching, hungry for the warmth of their fear, craving the pain that radiated from Marcy and her friends. "What do we do?" Jen cried, her voice choked with panic, glancing at Marcy, who felt the weight of their shared terror pressing down on her. "Get back," Marcy shouted, pushing the others behind her. She wouldn't let Esther win. Not now. Not ever. In a moment of raw defiance, she raised her voice, her command wrapped around her determination. "We control our truths. You can't have us." The figures flinched as if her words cut through them, shockwaves rattling through their forms. For a fleeting second, they hesitated, and that glimmer of hope ignited the tiny flicker of power in Marcy's chest. "Together," James yelled, rallying the others. They clutched each other's hands, forming a fragile circle of light amidst the encroaching darkness, the love of their connection sparking courage against the swirling chaos. But Esther wasn't done. Her laughter swelled, overpowering their courage. You really think you can resist? You've invited the darkness. It feasts on your pain, your doubt. You feed it with every confession. The shadows surged forward again, palpable and hungry. Monstrous hands reached, each grasp threatening to pull them into the abyss of despair. They were losing ground. As their mental strength waned, Marcy felt a familiar warmth from the core of her being. It was the love she had once feared her father's rejection, twisted into the unconditional support of her friends. She felt it surge forward, a bright light cutting through the dimness of their haunting. "Remember why we're fighting," Marcy shouted, her heart pulsing with every word. "We're more than our fears." The shadows surged, and with a quickly whispered prayer that felt more like a promise to her past, she directed all her strength into her voice. "We choose hope." The shadows recoiled, momentarily stung, a breath of disbelief running through their forms. Esther's haunting laughter twisted into a furious scream, but Marcy pushed past the noise, grounding her resolve in what felt like love blazing through her. But just as they began to push back against their fears, there was another loud crash at the door, the rush of unseen forces still yearning to break in. Who else could possibly be waiting beyond those walls? Was this night going to end in their liberation or their ultimate surrender? The tension hung thick around them, a chilling promise that whatever came next would test not just their courage, but their very souls. The air electrified, each breath a battle against the encroaching shadows. The door shook again, a violent reminder that whatever lurked beyond was equally insatiable. Marcy's heart thudded in her chest, an urgent drumbeat heralding their impending doom. Another crash. This time it splintered the wood, and the door jolted open wide. Light streamed in, momentarily pushing the darkness back, revealing twisted forms that writhed on the floor, howling their discontent. But it wasn't just the shadows that poured in. Something far worse slinked through the embodiment of all their worst instincts and failures, embodied in the person of Esther, her eyes glinting with a manic thirst for power. "Did you enjoy my little game?" Esther crooned, stepping into the room with a confidence that commanded fear. "You've shown me your strength. Now watch as I show you your weakness." Marcy tried to fight the urge to cower. Each of Esther's words sliced through her like a knife, the curator of all their pain. What had started as their battle against regret morphed into something primal, a struggle for their very existence. "Stay together," Marcy shouted, desperately locking eyes with Jen and James. They were all that mattered now, the threads of hope woven between their hearts flickering but alive. But the shadows began to close in again, and without warning, they lunged at Marcy, accusations flying from their grotesque mouths. "You're not enough. You'll never be anything more than a disappointment." Intense venom seeped from their words. Marcy shuddered, grappling with the truth hidden beneath their haunting claims. She was afraid not just of what lay ahead. A pit opened inside of her as she wrestled with her own doubts. Would they win this battle, or would she fail them, just as she had feared for so long? Then, anger surged, a force that blazed brighter than her doubt. "That's not who we are," she roared, pulling from her core, and the energy radiated down to her friends. James squeezed her hand, his grip tightening. "No matter what they say, we're not alone." As their hands clasped together, unity pulsed between them, sparking against the despair surrounding them. Marcy felt a rush, a clarity in the moment unfolding before her. She realized that they weren't just fighting the shadows, they were battling their shared history, their fears, their pain. Esther's smile faltered, confusion flickering across her face. In this wretched moment where the twisted cacophony of darkness mixed with the light of their collective courage, clarity washed over Marcy. "It's time to show her the power of what we've built." Together, they shouted in unison, pouring every ounce of their fear, hope, regret, and love into a central burst of energy that radiated from them like a beacon in the night. The shadows writhed angrily, screeching as their essence was shattered under the weight of this powerful defiance. But just as victory seemed tangible, a piercing wind rushed through the room. Items flew off the shelves, and a thick fog seeped in, twisting around Esther as she screamed, her face contorting with rage. "No, you are mine. You cannot escape what I have created." The walls moaned, tremors shaking the very foundation. Jen clutched Marcy's arm, her face pale. What is happening? What does she mean? In that moment, a deep rumbling erupted from the shadows, an angry growl that twisted Marcy's stomach. Light and dark battled viciously, both sides squaring off as the room seemingly imploded. Would they prevail, or would Esther's wrath consume them whole? With every ounce of strength left in her, Marcy searched for that spark of hope. But suddenly, a blinding flash struck from the heart of the shadows. Everything went white, and in the blink of an eye, they were plunged into darkness again. The question swirled, heavier than ever. What would it take to break Esther's stranglehold? Was there something hidden in their past that could turn the tide? Marcy's eyes snapped open as suffocating silence enveloped them. The battle wasn't over, and the answers were closer than they appeared, lurking in the shadows that clung to the corners of the room. The darkness enveloped Marcy, Jen, and James like a thick fog, suffocating and cold. Their eyes adjusted slowly, revealing glimpses of shapes that writhed in the corners, echoing their most profound fears. The air was still, a heavy silence draping over them like a shroud. What just happened? James murmured, his voice barely a whisper, laced with confusion and dread. I don't know, Marcy replied, her heart racing. But we can't give up now. The shadows surrounding them stirred, whispering, taunting, always looking to claim their fear. Marcy clutched Jen and James's hands tighter, the warmth of their fingers grounding her. She knew they couldn't let Esther's horrific magic tear them apart. Together, she shouted, channeling her resolve into every word. We take our power back. The shadows twisted, moaning under the weight of their courage as they began to dissolve, retreating against the light of their gathering strength. Marcy felt the energy pooling around them, like a fire igniting beneath thick ice. Esther's figure flickered on the edge of their vision, her face contorted into a grimace of rage. You think you've won? You're still trapped in this nightmare. She spat, her voice a growl that sent chills crawling over their skin. But we're not alone in this. Jen matched her defiance, her voice climbing. Together, we shine brighter than any darkness. With every pulse of unity, shadows withdrew, revealing patches of light that grew bolder each time they forged their collective truth. They unleashed their deepest confessions, the truths that had bound them. I am worthy. I am enough. I choose love. Esther shuddered, her control slipping as the shadows screamed in anguish. They shrank back into the corners, their once formidable forms crumbling. No, you can't do this, she shrieked, desperation clawing at her words. Watch us, Marcy exclaimed, a powerful force swelling in her chest. We are more than our fears. As they united their voices one final time, a brilliant light erupted from their hands, illuminating the darkened room. The energy surged like a tidal wave, crashing into Esther, forcing her to stagger backward. No, this can't be happening. Esther's form dissolved into a whirl of shadows, her power unraveling before their very eyes. It's over, Esther, Jen shouted, driving the last remnants of fear from their hearts. You don't control us anymore. In a blinding flash, the shadows dissipated, drawn into the brilliance as Esther's form flickered one last time before vanishing into nothingness. The room fell silent, the oppressive weight lifting, leaving behind only echoes of laughter from the villagers celebrating outside. Marcy, Jen, and James stood together, breathless, their strength ebbing as they leaned on each other. They had faced their fears, fought against the darkness, and emerged victorious. Is it really over? James asked, peering into the void that had been Esther's dark domain. I think so. We did it, Marcy replied, her voice laced with disbelief and relief. A heavy door creaked open, revealing the sunlit world outside bursting with life. Laughter erupted from the townsfolk, blissfully unaware of the nightmare that had just unfolded. Come on, let us go back to them, Jen urged, her eyes sparkling with the promise of a new beginning. As they stepped through the threshold, warmth enveloped them, the sunlight washing over their skin. The energy that had bonded them in the cottage now resonated within the joy around them. They shared triumphant looks, knowing that they had faced the darkest shadows of themselves and emerged free. The townsfolk gathered, noticing the trio first, expressions shifting from curiosity to awe. "Did you confront her?" one elder asked, fear peppering his tone. Marcy nodded, a soft smile growing on her face. "And we defeated her, for good." Cheers erupted, a cascade of joy as the community enveloped them, celebrating a Thanksgiving reborn without the weight of fear. As they laughed and embraced, Marcy felt the warmth of connection anew, tighter than ever. Together, they had woven a tapestry of resilience that no darkness could unravel again. That I in the heart of the cottage, now a mere memory. Esther's laughter faded as the veil of shadows lifted, leaving only whispers behind. The trio moved further into the embrace of their town. The weight of their truth lightened in the face of community. "We'll never let fear take hold again, right?" Jen said, looking between them as they walked away from that cottage of horrors. "Right," Marcy replied, her heart buoyant. They had faced their darkest hours. They had reclaimed their truths. Now, they could finally feast on hope, love, and the unbreakable bond between them. Let this Thanksgiving be a reminder together. We are stronger than any darkness life may throw our way. Don't you dare leave just yet. Here is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss any of the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. And you need to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Finally, don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible conclusion. Together, let us build this amazing community.